Celebrating 42 seasons on the air, Farmweek is a production of Mississippi State University Extension. Today on Farm Week, two little girls found miraculously after days in a California wilderness. Turns out they had 4-H survival training.
Meat labeling, the ongoing feud. Mississippi's Ag Commissioner speaks out.
Butterfly gardening, more people are doing it. Gary shows us just how easy it is to do from scratch.
And it's the Chile Pepper Capital of the world. We'll visit Hatch, New Mexico. Farm Week starts right now. Hello everyone, I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Mike Russell. Good to have you with us today on Farm Week. As we await the outcome of trade talks between the U.S. and China, domestic news in the headlines and good news at that as two young girls lost for days in a Northern California forest were found safe and sound. Leah Carrico, 8, on the left, and her little sister Caroline, 5, walked away from their home in Humboldt County and became lost. By the end of the search, 44 hours later, nearly 300 rescue workers had been deployed. I talked to Sheriff William Hansel. He credits survival skills the two girls learned in 4-H.
It was so surprising to the guys that were out there that found them that they were dry, that they had crawled underneath the bushes to where they found a dry spot next to the tree trunks, and they stayed there. They huddled there. And they, kept close for warmth, and they were dry despite the fact that it was raining for 2 days. They were a little bit cool, but not bad. They weren't hypothermic. They were hungry. They didn't have anything to eat, but they did consume water by, licking and getting the water off the leaves. They were very, very brave, and I think this is, to the credit of 4-H and the wilderness training that they received that was just really instrumental.
Hansel describes the rescue as miraculous. Meanwhile, I also spoke to John Long, a 4-H youth development specialist at Mississippi State University. He says there's a reason why it's called 4-H.
The things that are taught in 4-H, head, heart, hands, and health. One of the main things, if you find yourself lost, they always tell you is to stop. Stop and think about the situation that you're in, and by that you have to use your head. The techniques that they use, I'm sure if they did any of those survival techniques, they had to use their hands as well. And you have to have that, maintain that integrity that you're going to survive, and that comes from within, so your heart is as well. So I'm sure they used all aspects of 4-H to survive.
A happy ending for sure. But things not so happy in an ongoing feud between traditional and alternative meat producers, as both the FDA and USDA lay claim to the changing meat landscape. Mississippi Department of Agriculture Commissioner Andy Gibson filed a statement with both not long ago. In that statement, he wrote, quote, "If cell-cultured food product companies refer to their products as clean meat, there is an underlying implication that traditionally produced meats are dirty. I ask that you assist these companies in avoiding mischaracterizations as the field of cell-cultured food products expands. I believe it is in the best interest of consumers as well as the industry for FDA and USDA to use the regulatory oversight they have to prevent dubious, fraudulent, and untruthful labeling claims." In Mississippi, both parties seem to agree that cell-cultured food products should not be called meat. A bill to that effect was passed nearly unanimously in both houses of the state legislature. It now awaits the governor's signature.
The EPA is tightening up on new herbicide restrictions nationwide. Meanwhile, participants at the recent Mississippi Ag Consultants Association meeting in Starkville learned what these new requirements mean for future crop management. Farm Week's Amy Myers has the story.
Err on the side of caution because a lot of times pesticides are already under scrutiny. If we don't, we really run the risk of potentially losing those tools in the future.
Professor Dr. Darren Dodds says one of the biggest concerns with spraying certain herbicides is possibly damaging other crops and insects not meant to be sprayed. Hence, new EPA restrictions. One of the major topics here at today's meeting focuses on details about restrictions and training requirements for the use of dicamba. Industry professionals say the parameters aren't exactly ideal, but they are necessary to follow.
In years past, the person driving the sprayer could work under potentially the farm owner or the farm manager or whoever's application license to make those applications. But in 2019 and forward, that person has to have a commercial or private pesticide applicator license, and that person has to be trained on dicamba application.
Also, no applications are allowed within an hour after sunrise or within 2 hours of sunset. That's when inversion layers are common. Here's an example using colored smoke.
Inversion is when you have a layer of cool air trapped under a layer of warm air, and they typically occur when there's not a lot of wind movement. So when you spray these things, instead of hitting the target or the soil where they're supposed to, they tend to just hang in the air, if you will. And then when the wind does start moving, they move, any sort of direction, and then you run into problems with off-target movement.
In some cases, growers could find themselves in legal trouble if they're not careful. Dicamba restrictions vary by state. Needless to say, it's important that applicators understand those rules before planting gets underway. I'm Amy Myers reporting.
Butterfly gardening is a popular pastime, and it won't be long before the temperatures warm up and spring will be sprung. Meanwhile, did you know that you can start growing butterfly plants from scratch? Here's Gary Bachman with the know-how to show how.
The interest in plants for butterfly gardens is increasing every year. Did you know it's pretty easy to start your own butterfly plants? Let me share some tips on how I do it. This year I'm concentrating on growing butterfly weed from seed. It's really an easy process. When starting any seeds, I always use germination mix. You can see that it has a much finer texture than my regular potting mix. I'm going to fill my plug tray with moistened germination mix. These plug trays are readily available at many garden centers. I like to make a shallow depression in each cell. Butterfly weed seed should be planted about 1/4 inch deep. Then a single seed is dropped into the hole, which is covered with more germination mix. The tray is covered by a clear humidity dome. Then these trays go on my germination shelves under LED shop lights. After several weeks, you'll have nicely growing seedlings. You can see I've got a really good stand growing. When ready, I'll transplant these into 4-inch cups into my regular potting mix. And in a month, these plants will be ready to go into my garden for the enjoyment of monarch butterflies. I've got extra interest in growing butterfly plants this year. You see, my garden is a stop on the Rosalind Carter Butterfly Trail that starts in Plains, Georgia. For more information, go to rosalindcarterbutterflytrail.org. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman, and I'll see you next time on Southern Gardening.
Well, the cold air this week didn't make it a time to be out and about at a garden center or anywhere else for very long.
That's right, for sure, Mike. And now we've got to deal with the change to daylight saving time on Saturday night, the 9th, but that will, of course, provide a lot more daylight for those who want to be out gardening or whatever.
Like that part.
Yeah, and on a more serious note, some economists say the government turned its back on America's cotton farmers with the tariff program. Also in the markets this week, corn prices may be poised to head north. Many traders wonder how bean prices can be as good as they are. And the U.S. dairy herd gets smaller. Many economists will tell you the U.S. tariff program locked the cotton market and has been brutal on all of those who grow this crop. Trader O.A. Cleveland thinks the longer the trade war goes on, the weaker the support for cotton will become. He is of the opinion the world flow of cotton has even been permanently changed. Cleveland believes the price risk for growers in 2019 is the most they've ever faced, and he cautions that the chance for lower prices outweighs the possibility of higher cotton trades. Well, it appears that ethanol from corn holds the key to what direction grain prices turn this year. Illinois consultant Mac Bennett says the tight stocks-to-use ratio right now could set the stage for a significant corn rally. However, analyst Ted Seifert notes the profit margins in ethanol from corn have dropped dramatically and could well limit any upside for prices.
That is a bad sign. Ethanol for the longest time has been the shining bright spot on a corn balance sheet. And the fact that we're kind of losing that a little bit is not good news. Exports have been somewhat soft because Brazil crops look good. They're always our number one or number two importer of ethanol. Obviously, we're not doing any business with China, so that softer export market's not helping. The sharply lower RIN values are a problem, okay? So the small refinery waivers are causing a big effect on the ethanol market. So we need to fix that. If we can fix the ethanol market, I think corn has a fairly good outlook as long as we don't gain too many acres. But without that, that is a problem. So I'm friendly corn. How much upside potential? I have 444 as a target for my summer high or for my yearly high for corn, for new crop corn this year. I'd like to see that. This is a year where I'm a little concerned that maybe we don't get that, and a lot of that's going to depend on what happens with soybeans going forward.
Indeed, many ag economists are scratching their head over the soybean market. Many, like Ed Usit of the University of Minnesota, remain surprised that soybean prices are as good as they are. Trader John Roach notes that a lot of farmers did choose to use grain bins to hang on to their soybeans after harvest simply because the price is not what they need.
Somebody's going to have to carry beans into the new crop. And so nobody really wants to do that. If we talk to them today, they say, no, I don't want to do that. But what the market's going to do is it's going to make that your best choice. If you don't pick a price and get your beans marketed, your best choice eventually will be, I'll carry them on into the new year.
We have an export question for today's trivia quiz on Farm Week. Let's take a look at what it is. How much of U.S. agricultural exports leaving the port of New Orleans goes to China? Is the answer A, 9%, B, 17%, C, 23%, or D, 35%? We'll tell you the answer here shortly.
We'll take a break right here, but don't go away. Coming up on our Farm Week feature, a hot story. We're at the Rio Grande River, where in that part of the country, they grow a crop that's been on plates longer than apple pie has been American. Hatch, New Mexico is the chili pepper capital of the world. There's even a Chile Pepper Institute for an industry worth almost $500 million a year. There's more to that story, though. Find out what it is coming up on Farm Week. Don't go away.
At Mississippi State University, Extension is reaching beyond the college campus and impacting adult education. We're instructing agricultural professionals on the latest trends in research and technology, inspiring communities, empowering small businesses, and promoting the growth of healthy families where youth and adults can reach their fullest potential.
The MSU Extension Service, sharing our vision for the future.
And welcome back. Let's take a quick look at the Farm Week calendar. First, an all-day pecan education workshop on Wednesday, March 20th at the Central Mississippi R&D Center in Raymond. You'll learn about establishing and maintaining an orchard, grafting, irrigation, pecan varieties, and weed, disease, insect, and wildlife management. This workshop is particularly helpful for beginners, but all commercial pecan growers are welcome. For more info, call Dr. Rebecca Mellinson at 601-857-2284. Next, on Thursday, April 4th from 2:30 to 6 at the Coastal Plain Branch Experiment Station in Newton, it's a forage field day. There, you'll learn about alfalfa production, winter grazing systems, variety, selection, forage economics, drought insurance, and more. There will be a catered dinner. Register by Friday, March 29th. For more information, call Jenna Mosley at 601-683-2084.
The cattle inventory report was released by the government on February 28th. Among the findings, the decrease in the number of milk cows in the U.S. was the largest in 9 years. Extension livestock economist Josh Maples talked to me about all the numbers earlier this week. Well, let's start with the big picture. Is the nation's herd bigger or smaller than a year ago?
So larger than a year ago, Leighton. 94.8 million head of all cattle and calves in the U.S. This was up about 0.5% over a year ago. And if you look at the 5-year picture, we're up a little more than 6 million head over that low point in 2015 or 2014.
So is this a surprise to you?
It's really not. You know, the expectations coming into this report were mostly flat herd growth, and that's really what we've seen, and that's kind of the projection moving forward.
Now, what about the number of beef cows in the U.S.? What did that look like?
Yeah, so the total number of beef cows in the U.S., 31.8 million head. This was up a little less than 1% compared to last year, so that's how much the beef herd grew in 2018. Slower growth is definitely not the 2 to 3% increases we saw in 15 and 16. And then if we look at the number of heifers held for replacement, that number was down 3% from a year ago. So all these signs are kind of pointing towards that slower to flat growth that we're looking at.
Now understand the milk herd, the dairy herd shrank.
Yeah, so dairy herd shrank for the first time in 5 years, and it was the largest decrease since 2010. We were down about 80,000 head of dairy cows to a little over 9 million head in the U.S.
So I would assume that's a reflection of the situation in the dairy industry.
Unfortunately, it is. So margins in the dairy industry are really tight right now. That's forced some herd reductions and even some liquidation.
Now, is the calf crop, I want to ask you, what happened there? What kind of numbers did we see?
So calf crop in 2018 estimated 645,000 more calves hit the ground in 18 than in 17. This is a little less than a 2% increase. And if you put that together, we're looking at increased beef supplies into 2019 and probably into 2020 due to the larger number of calves.
The answer to our trivia quiz is not exactly a large number, but it may not be what you expected if you have already made your choice. And here it is. C is the right one. 23% of the exports leaving New Orleans before the trade war began were headed to China.
Well, here's that hot story we promised you. Hatch, New Mexico, along Highway 26 in the southern part of the state, claims to be the chili pepper capital of the world. I've been there, and I can tell you it pretty much lives up to its name. But there's a lot of backstory to all that success. Here's Josh Bittner.
In the land of enchantment, New Mexico's signature farm commodity casts a spell on the taste buds, sparking a fiery debate.
So the big question, red or green?
Green.
Red.
Chili peppers, green or red, have enriched the southwestern palate for longer than apple pie has been American.
We let it tumble in there and the skin just comes right off.
Green chilies make everything better.
Oh yeah, we eat them on everything.
Every year, tourists flock to the small town of Hatch, New Mexico, the self-proclaimed green chili capital of the world, to celebrate and devour a fresh harvest.
I just love this place. I'll probably be back next year to buy more chili so I can have it all year long.
More lucrative green, New Mexico chilies turn red the longer they stay on the vine, offering a different taste profile and dried powder. The crop is entwined with local identity. Hanging ristras are symbols of health and good luck. And New Mexico has enjoyed good fortune as the national leader in chili pepper production, though fault lines may be appearing.
If you look at the production in the United States in 2016, California accounted for about 2/3 of that production, and New Mexico accounted for slightly under 1/3.
Dr. Jay Lillywhite is an agricultural economist with New Mexico State University, where hybrid research done over a century ago gave birth to today's robust strains. And on campus in Las Cruces, the Chile Pepper Institute continues to educate and promote an industry he claims is worth over $400 million annually. Lillywhite adds that although New Mexican chili production has dropped from 35,000 acres in the early 1990s down to around 8,000 today, the state's processing infrastructure still beats out domestic competition. But pressure from other states and Mexico have some digging deeper as a buffer against disruption.
There's only so much chili that can be grown in the Hatch region, or only so much chili that can be grown in New Mexico. And as that demand continues to increase, if you can actually build a marketing campaign around that, there will obviously be premiums.
Hatch Valley growers have adopted a distinct branding strategy to distinguish their product from a host of others. Adjacent to the Rio Grande, The region has long been hailed for its unique blend of favorable soil and climate conditions.
The Hatch Valley here in southern New Mexico has become synonymous with high-quality green chili.
Grower Preston Mitchell says his yields average 20 to 30 tons per acre, with prices ranging from $500 to over $600 per ton for green varieties.
You can hear that nice crisp pop as it pops open. Tear that pod open and you'll see just a thin little yellow strip running up that vein, and that's the capsaicin in the pod that you taste as heat.
Labor costs can bite into profits because harvest is done by hand. Mitchell says finding workers is a challenge in itself. Mechanization, long rumored, remains elusive. And drought, all too abundant.
95% of the water that fills up Elephant Butte comes from snowpack runoff. And we just haven't had it since 2003 on a regular basis. We may have one good year, maybe two, and then nothing.
Elephant Butte Irrigation District covers over 90,000 acres of irrigable land in southern New Mexico. Manager Gary Esslinger says low levels in reservoirs on the Rio Grande north of Hatch forced ratepayer allotments down from an average 3 acre-feet to just 10 inches in 2018. But a complicated set of decades-old agreements also legally require the utility to satisfy surface water deliveries downstream first to Texas and Mexico.
Certainly we have to abide by the law and yet try our best to supply the water that's necessary to these farms. It's a constant battle. And the litigation is always flowing here. It never stops.
EBID has been at the center of legal wrangling between the federal government, Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas for over a decade in regards to water rights under the Rio Grande Compact Agreement. The case is expected to go before the U.S. Supreme Court next year. And it's a gamble for New Mexico, says Esslinger, adding that new stakeholders, ushered in by recent population booms, are unfamiliar and unwilling to compromise with water laws drawn up over 80 years ago.
It's the public at large that really doesn't understand the complexity of how we have to operate down here. It's real easy for me to explain to a farmer what's going on because of the drought, because most of these farmers have been here 3 and 4 generations, some of them even 5.
My great-great-grandfather is actually credited with being the first chili farmer in the Hatch Valley. His name was Giuseppe Franzoy, and he was an immigrant from Austria.
Preston Mitchell's operation pumped a majority of groundwater to irrigate crops during the past season. But over time, only salty, brackish water is left in uncharged aquifers, making an infusion of fresh Rio Grande River water essential.
The drought is a major concern to growers in this area.
Mitchell has had to grow his business to remain profitable. Expanding acres, processing, and roasting chilies have all become a part of the mix. As word spreads and orders for Hatch Valley green chilies come in from across the globe, Mitchell reiterates regional branding is a vital ingredient for future growth.
Hatch chili is sought for by buyers at grocery stores such that they will not take chili from elsewhere. So it kind of allows us to have this little niche within the overall green chili market and continue to farm and continue to be able to farm profitably.
There really is nothing like a roasted chili pepper. Great story.
Certainly is. Amazing, Mike, they can grow such a big crop in such a small area.
Absolutely is amazing.
Well, next week, an encore presentation, the story of a young girl doing big things for one so young. She's 11 years old, but you'd never know it. In just a year, 4-H'er Peyton Bell has come far. She's young but driven, and she's got a bushel of awards that proves she loves what she's doing.
The rest of what they call her goat village is right there too, helping her roll with the punches. The sweet story of a young girl who lights up the show ring next time on Farm Week. Before we sign off today, we spent a lot of time talking about animals on the show. Some of them are just a wee bit bigger than the rest. We couldn't pass up on this one. A crew from the University of Michigan ran into this creepy crawler in the Amazon rainforest not long ago and just posted this video. A spider big enough to attack and drag away a young possum. We're told the body of the spider is as big as a large dinner plate, And if that's not enough to give you nightmares, I don't know what is.
Maybe this, an alligator in southwest Georgia, more than 13 feet long and weighing more than 700 pounds. That is wildlife biologist Brent Howes in the picture with this monster. We talked to Brent. He told us this alligator was likely close to 50 years old and was still alive when this picture was taken after they'd pulled him out of a ditch. The alligator had old injuries, one of them a bullet hole, and had to be euthanized. Meanwhile, Brent was pretty calm about the whole thing.
It wasn't like he was in a high populated area or anything like that. It was, like I said, a farmer. It was in the edge of a field, an irrigation ditch. Came off of a lake that a lot of people fish and ski and swim in. And, you know, I don't think I swim in it, and it's not changing my mind. I'm going to continue to. But we got down there and had to put a snare on him and try and get him out. And it proved a little more challenging than we had initially anticipated. But between all of us, we finally figured out a way to make it happen.
Big animal.
Wow, and that spider, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Remember, if you missed the story, look for the past episodes of Farm Week at our website, farmweek.tv.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. We'll see you next week.